Hello and welcome to this session where we're going to talk about Data Vantage, DealStreetAsia's comprehensive data and analytics offering. I'm Deepshikha Monga, an editor at DealStreetAsia, and today I'm joined by Valerie Law, Team Lead Research, and Andi Haswidi, the Head of Asean Research at DealStreetAsia. Welcome, Val and Andi.
Hello.
Hi, Deepshikha.
Let's begin with the highlights from our latest report, which covers fundraising by Southeast Asia-based startups so far this year. Andi, what's the data telling us?
Hi, everyone. I'll be sharing the private capital market activity in Southeast Asia in the past 9 months. And this data is up to September 25th. If you look at our first slide for today, you can see how investors have channeled at least 17.2 billion into homegrown venture-backed companies in the region. And the 17.2 billion is actually twice the value recorded in the same period last year and already well above 8.5 billion raised throughout 2020. So of the total funding, equity investments contributed 15.4 billion or 90% of the total proceeds, while the rest were other instruments, including debt. And if you look at the quarterly deal performance shown by the chart to the left, you can see that the total fundraising value per quarter has been trending above 5 billion in the past 3 quarters. Because of this and the fact that Indonesia's ride-hailing Gojek will soon close its 2 billion pre-IPO round, we are confident that the total funding for startups in Southeast Asia will surpass 20 billion. And that is quite an achievement for Southeast Asia. This year fundraising performance suggests that despite the deep economic and social scars inflicted by the COVID-19 health crisis, businesses that are providing solutions to both traditional and emerging consumer pain points have continued to lure capital. And this trend also suggests that the confidence of global investors on Southeast Asia's long-term economic outlook appears to remain largely intact. On top of the remarkable fundraising performance, I'm pleased to share with within the period, Southeast Asia has minted 18 new tech unicorns. These are companies that have surpassed 1 billion valuation during their last fundraising. This is more than the total number of unicorns created in the previous 5 years, basically. So we began at the start of the year with Singapore-based PetSnap. It completed a 300 million Series E funding round, joined by SoftBank, Vision Fund, Sequoia, and others, and then followed by GNT Express, Indonesia's one of the largest logistics players in Indonesia. The company raised 2 billion, but I want to highlight that this funding is largely allocated for its expansion in China. That said, logistics firms have been performing very strongly in the past 9 months, thanks to e-commerce expansion in the region. We have 2 other logistics companies reaching unicorn status this year, and that is Flash Express and Ninja Van. On e-commerce, we have 4 unicorns that became 4 e-commerce companies. They became unicorns, and these are Carson, Caro, Blibli.com, and more recently Carousel. As you will see in my presentation letter, Fintech has been the most active business vertical this year, outperforming e-commerce. So out of the 18 companies that became unicorns this year, 7 are Fintech companies. These include B2B payment solution provider Nium and Indonesia's Sendit. We also have Kredivo, also known as Finaxel, which will list publicly via a SPAC deal with Victoria Park Capital, which valued the company at 2.5 billion. And we're expecting more companies to reach unicorn status before the end of the year. And this should include Ajaib and Zilingo. We understand from credible sources that these companies are close to finalizing their latest funding round at unicorn valuation. So this slide should give you an overview of what's happening across different markets in Southeast Asia, particularly in 6 of the largest economies. Like in previous years, the region's financial hub, Singapore, is the top market for investment. But what's different this year is that the total proceeds have tripled from 3.2 billion in the first 9 months of last year to 9.7 billion as of September 25th. So this is without factoring the 4 billion private investment in public equity in Grab that is tied to its merger plan with Altimeter Growth Corp, which is expected to conclude later on this year. So in our second largest investment market, Indonesia, startup fundraising reached 4.9 billion, up from 3.2. But as I said earlier, this includes the 2 billion raised by JNT for its expansion in China. And I think by the end of this year, Indonesia funding will reach around 7 billion if we factor GoTo, which is currently raising 2 billion pre-IPO round, and Ajaib as well. The wealth tech company is soon going to close its funding. Moving on to other markets, Vietnam eclipsed the 1 billion mark for the first time this year. As of September 25th, the total funding reached 1.4 billion. This is 3 times larger than the previous 9 months of last year. And we also saw a significant pickup in Philippines and Malaysia. But unfortunately, Thailand we see a small dip, but a dip nevertheless in startup funding. I think this was largely to do with COVID, how it's affecting SMEs in Thailand. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. As you can see, the increase in fundraising activities happen across all investment stages. Southeast Asia recorded 201 seed investment deals as of September 25th, that is, and that's 40% more than the previous period last year. And Series A deals increased even higher with 75% growth, followed by Series B with 52% and Series C with 58%. Series D saw the biggest jump as the number of deals increased from 3 last year to 8. Singapore Fintech and AI company Advanced Intelligence Group, which is the parent company of Indonesia's largest P2P lending firm in terms of disbursed loans, which is Kredit Pintar, raised the largest Series D round this year with 400 million, and followed by Singapore-based B2B payment firm Neum and Malaysia-founded used car platform Custom with 170 million. So all 3 companies secured unicorn status following the investment this year. The chart on the right side of the presentation of the slide may provide a view into how valuations have changed in the past 9 months. So at the onset of the pandemic last year, startup valuations were expected to come down across investment stages. Of course, our quarterly review of median value of startup funding suggests that valuations indeed weakened in the 3rd and 4th quarters of last year. This is because most of the regions started the travel restrictions and mandatory health protocols. But as you can see, valuations have improved. We spotted the improvement in the 1st quarter of this year. So if you total the first 9 month data, you can see the median value of equity funding across C to Series B round have increased significantly, with the exception of Series A, which may remain under pressure. Series A is typically a stage where a company starts generating revenue, and there's definitely stricter due diligence process relative to seed stage. So given the challenges facing the market under the pandemic condition, Series A investors, we believe, which mostly consists of homegrown VCs, local VCs in the region, have become more cautious in dispersing funds, as they set more conservative targets for their own fund collection. Okay, moving on to my final slide for today. As business and consumers shifted their transactions online during the pandemic, Fintech has emerged as the most active business vertical this year, outperforming e-commerce. And this is excluding the chart basically separates deals secured by Fintech lending and insurtech firms. So Fintech companies, these are companies providing payments, wealth tech companies. They recorded at least 147 funding deals as of September 25th, with a total proceeds of 3.2 billion. So these figures are significantly higher compared to the same period last year, where we saw 71 deals and a total funding of 803 million. So this growth, this increase partly explains how Fintech generated more unicorns relative to other verticals. As I mentioned before, 7 out of 18 unicorns that are minted this year are of the Fintech category. So with so many deals happening and so many unicorns being created in a single year, I think we can safely say that, as a private capital investment destination, Southeast Asia has stormed past the inflection point, and we should see strong activities going forward on the back of rapid digitalization, as well as high expectations for post-pandemic economic recovery. That's all from me, Deepshikha. For more details into the fundraising performance, our audience can get access to our private capital market Southeast Asia 2021 report, which is accessible for free to all summit attendees. But for more details on fundraising in the region, I suggest our audience check out our data Vantage application, which my colleague Valerie will give introduction and demo. Please take it away, Deepshikha.
Sure. Thank you, Andi. Let's zoom in on Data Vantage. Earlier this year, we launched our database to supplement our existing data offerings, which include deal monitors, monthly reports, and quarterly trackers. The database, which captures the latest fundraising and financial performance data for Singapore-registered startups, complements our extensive news expertise and allows us to break stories and provide you with additional context. I'll ask Valerie to take us through the database and explain how our users can benefit from it. Over to you, Val.
Thanks, Deepshikha. Whether you are looking to boost your deal pipeline by finding companies that fit your criteria or finding out shareholders in privately held companies, Data Vantage is here to assist you. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I will be covering certain functionalities of the database that can help you, our valued subscribers and event attendees, use Data Vantage for your day-to-day work. The main tools of the database lie in 4 sections, which we have listed on the sidebar of the database. Let me get started. Well, in the sidebar on the left, you see 4 main sections: the home page, the company section, the compare, advanced search. Of course, we also have the investor and director section, which I will go briefly into later on. Now, Data Vantage has over 1,600 privately held companies registered with Singapore's ACRA, but with operations across Asia. Data Vantage focuses on companies that have received PEVC funding over the last few years, so we can better serve the PEVC ecosystem in the region. We are now at the home page. By default, what you see is a list of companies that have updated their filings with Singapore's ACRA, listed by recency. By filings, we refer to company filings that review important changes in the company, such as change in paid-up capital, change in directors, change in shareholders, auditors, and of course, importantly, the financials. One thing to note is that the amount shown under funds raised is based on filing received directly from ACRA. It may differ from the announced funding that you see on news due to difference between the announcement date and the regulatory filing date, or differences in exchange rate at the time of announcement versus filing. Another thing to note is that ACRA filings only reflect the equity funding received by a company so far, while an announced round could include debt and other instruments. Well, if you prefer not to see the list by recency, you can choose to arrange them by most funded or highest valued by clicking on the blue buttons here and here. Right, so let us look at the latest funded list. Scroll down. As you go down towards the page, you will realize that you come to a small section called notifications. What the notification section displays is actually a list of companies that you have followed previously. I will get into how to follow a company shortly when we go straight into looking into the company in depth. Now let's pick, for example, I want to explore a certain private company in depth. Let us go to explore Carousel, for example. There you have selected, you have to click into company, and you will find that we are now at the main page of Carousel. The first part of the company information is actually a box which shows year of incorporation, the business activity as they have described themselves in ACRA, etc., and of course the sector. In the blue grayish box over here, you see important data such as valuation, funding, and the latest key financials that the company has filed. So if you see 15.7 million here, it's actually the amount of revenue that the company has filed as of December 2019. We do not have December 2020 because the company has not filed this information yet. But once they do, we'll be alerted and these financials will be updated accordingly. The next section is the funding rounds, the funding amounts per year, and you will, if you were to hover over them, you can see the total amount of funding per year. Next, we can look at the shareholder list. This is also updated frequently. You will be able to actually sort them by the largest and smallest shareholders, as I have did just now by clicking on the arrow. Of course, if you want to go deeper into each shareholder, you can click into it. Let us continue on this company's page. The investment rounds. Well, we have actually used an internal algorithm to classify the rounds. Basically, they are benchmarked using pricing as well as certain time window so as to be quite close to the actual rounds that the company announced. This gives us a slightly more accurate view of how each round is being aggregated. You will see that we can also sort it by recency, or as I've done here, or I want to look at the older rounds by clicking on this. All right. Okay, you will see for Carousel, Stick Special Situation Cosmic is actually the latest shareholder in the latest round. Moving on, we can see the directors list. when they are active and when they have withdrawn. And of course, important part is the financials over the years. We have also trends. If the company has reported some of the years of financials, the balance sheet, and lastly, the cash flow. We have also simple ratio analysis to help you. Now we've come to a very interesting portion called network visualization. You're able to see the investors and the directors in the company. Of course, you can move this around. Or if you want to just look at the investors alone, you can click on this. And you want to look at the directors alone, you click on this. Of course, if you don't want to see just the direct relationship, you can try pressing Hops 1 and 2. Hops 2 gives you an overview of other relationships, directors or shareholders that may be sitting and holding shares in other companies, for example, in here. All right, let us move on to another function that can help you in your search for other types of companies that match what you are looking for. So in order to enhance your deal pipeline, we can use the advanced search function on the left. The advanced search function here can help you save a ton of time, especially if you have very specific criteria in mind. For example, if I wish to look for fintech firms incorporated in the last 5 years, and they received funding between September 1st, 2020 to September 1st, 2021, we can try this criteria. So let us get started. We type fintech incorporated in the last 5 years. We select the funding date range. 1st September 2020 here and until 1st September 2021. There you go. And let's say I have some other criteria in mind. I want it to have a certain valuation or operating margin. I can also use this to toggle. So let us see what the results we have. Voila, we have 73 companies. So of course, if you want to refine the search further, you can do that by toggling the operation margins or even, the valuation. And then your list will narrow. Moving on, we have the compare function. Currently, the compare function allows us to compare 2 companies in our database at the same time. Let's say I want to compare 2 companies operating car platforms. Let me try Caro. There you go. And OLX Photos. There you go. You're able to see their basic information. You're able to see their shareholders, their revenues, other financials, assets, balance sheets, and of course, ratio analysis. Remember, I said earlier that sometimes the funding or the even financials may not seem to match what they have announced. This is because the Accra entity may not specifically match what they have announced due to different entities involved. Okay, now we have coming to the end of the presentation. I'll just quickly touch on 2 other features. The investor feature allows you to see who are the most active investors and the amount that they have invested. You can toggle here and here. The same goes for the director feature. It allows you to see who are the directors involved in various companies by clicking into their names. Right? So with that, I hope you be able to use Data Vantage and help you with searching companies, whether they be growth or seed stage companies. And I will hand over to Andi, my colleague, to share about some exciting new features and data points that Vantage would be adding for our subscribers in the coming months. Over to you, Andi and Deepshikha.
Thank you, Valerie. So we're currently working on the Indonesian database. We're sourcing our data from Indonesia's Directorate General of Law Administration. So this is the equivalent of ACRA in Singapore. And we expect to have several hundreds venture-backed companies on our database, ready for our subscribers before the end of the year.
I would suggest that the audience members use the Q&A section to post their questions on Data Vantage. In the meantime, I'm going to be the one asking questions. Val, do you want to take us through the database, and perhaps we can begin with looking at the fintech lending sector. It's been gaining a lot of attention recently. How do I find fintech lending companies that have raised at least 50 million in funding? Can you show us?
Sure, Deepshikha. So when we are at the home page, this is what you see. And let us click the Get Started button. There we are. So for filtering through a huge database like this, it's best to go to the Advanced Search button. And Deepshikha, you were mentioning that we want to look deeper into, let's say, fintech lending. Okay, but let's just keep it broad for now. Maybe we try fintech first. Okay, of course, we can, choose years of incorporation, etc. But let us just play with, this toggles and say 50 million. Let's say if we can just be a bit. Okay, maybe we're quite close. Okay, there you go. And we wait patiently for this to load. It's quite fast today. So as you see, there's a list of 151 companies. You can plow through them. There's about 16 pages. So you might want to narrow your criteria by saying that, hey, I want it to have a certain operating margin, a certain range. Maybe I want it to have at least 7% and above. There you go. The list has narrowed down tremendously, right? We had about 100 plus companies just now. Now it's about 12. So yeah, you can toggle around and play with the other matrix over here. Do we have any other interesting questions from audience?
Okay, not at the moment. Let me take another question. Let me pose another question then. NinjaVan announced a huge funding round recently. How can I find the price per share in the latest round and compare it with the previous rounds?
So Andi, would you like to take that? I will just help you along. NinjaVan, right? Yep. Yeah. So, okay, let us go to NinjaVan. So NinjaVan, okay. Andi, can you help me?
Yeah, if you scroll down, go to the investment table. I think it's the third table from the top.
Yeah, I'll probably go a little slow for our audience who may not be very familiar. So maybe just take us through the sections as you scroll.
Okay, so can you? Okay, I go slightly lower. Okay, yeah.
No, slightly up, slightly up.
Okay.
Slightly. Okay, click on the date invested. Can we go slightly up, Valerie, just so our audience can see that this is the investment table?
May I also recommend that you use the option to go immersive? That's on your screen. If you use that, I think this will be better viewed.
Yeah. Okay.
So
you can, for share price, you can scroll to the right. If that's possible to you.
Yeah, so we are in the investment round section and I want to try. So let me scroll to the right.
Yeah.
It should be around here, isn't it?
Yep.
Exactly.
Okay. So we have the price per share and the amount invested, and you can then actually rank in terms of the how the value of shares held by each entity, which can be very useful for users to identify who the largest shareholders are.
Yeah, I've made the screen a bit smaller so that you can see the overview. But if you want a closer look, you can zoom in.
There's a question on the valuation for Ninja Van. Val, do you want to answer that and show them where they can find that information?
Sure. Thank you, Deepshikha. So for this Ninja Van, you can see that there's a valuation here in the box. Okay, and the funding so far.
And for those of you who were not able to join the previous session, Val, you can scroll down, you can also see the latest financials filed by the company and when they were filed, along with the valuation and funding information. Val, if you could show the financials, not the detailed ones, but the.
Okay,
also,
the box.
Can I add something, Val?
Sure.
Regarding the Ninja Van question, so this valuation is strictly for this entity, which is, can you show the legal name, Val? I think
Sure.
This is the Ninja Logistics. So there, when you look at valuation, be mindful of affiliated companies within the whole holding company. So this one is specifically for Ninja Logistics. That's why we have 1.8. But if you factor other entities, it could be higher, definitely.
In a combined fashion, right?
Yes.
I would also point out that our data is based on the ACRA filings by the company. It is based on the equity funding received so far. So there may be a disparity with the data announced, although Ninja Van, of course, has not announced its valuation. But there could be a disparity simply because a round could have other components such as debt. That may not reflect in the data that we pick from ACRA.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
We have another question. There are several existing corporate databases. Could you tell us what's the most unique and strong points of Data Vantage, and who are you targeting this at? Val, do you want to take that?
Sure. I think one of the unique selling points of Data Vantage is that we track the companies that are raising funds and have raised funds in the region, and not just any random. There are thousands of ACRA entities. We could have picked 7,000, 10,000 entities, but they don't matter too much for the ecosystem that we serve, which is the PEVC ecosystem, and those are closely watched. So we filter them and prioritize those that really matter to our investors, fund managers, and even startups who want to be really be in this space. Secondly, the unique proposition is also, if you go to other parts of Data Vantage, you're able to see and access reports by our team. We do in-depth reports about the ecosystem, such as wealth tech in Indonesia, done by my colleague Andi. We do ecosystem reports such as food delivery, and very interesting updates of the deal data that you can access through our reports. Right now, you probably have to scroll down. This is what I mean over here, the reports. I do not want to click away because it might change, but you can access this. You are given, and if you open up a new tab like what I did, you should be able to see where all our reports are stored. And of course, lastly, we also have a Data Vantage newsletter, which actually give you updates from the database that you might have missed. So whenever a company in our database files an alert, for example, they have filed new financials, they have change in shareholders or change in paid up capital, they will actually file that in ACRA, and we will update them and put them into our database. So all these alerts plus the ability to combine them with our news, which is very strong. I think Deepshikha can share about that, how we managed to break news based on the data Vantage and be ahead of the curve. Deepshikha, could you share something?
Sure, I completely agree. To add to what Val has already said, I think our biggest advantage is bringing the news and the data and the analysis together. So while there may be other databases, they do not have our news expertise and our ability to provide additional context to some of these deals. Data in itself is valuable, but without the context, it's not as useful. We hope to provide more context to why a funding round is important or why a change in shareholders is important. And I think that's one of our biggest advantages, in addition to the fact that we bring you this information first. Andi, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess in terms of we are constantly expanding our database. Every month we add around 100 to 200 venture-backed companies into our list. And we are currently working on the Indonesia database. By database, I mean we are sourcing new data from it that is specifically to Indonesia. Although Accra pretty much cover most venture-backed companies in the region, we get deeper insight into Indonesian companies. As you know, a lot of big tech companies in Indonesia only is registered in Indonesia and they will list in Indonesia. So this will add a lot of value to our database soon. We are hoping to launch that part of the database before the end of the year.
Yeah, with on-the-ground experts such as Andi, who covers Indonesia very in-depth. We have colleagues in Vietnam, Philippines, the region. Your kind of context and insights will be very different from other database who might have scraped the data just from, everywhere. And sometimes we also find that when we use the other databases, the updates or the figures in there are not very accurate, right? Andi and I were doing a Sunicon list, and then we realized, I will not mention the company, but the company supposedly was reported to have 710 million in funding. But then when we checked, actually it was input wrongly. It's actually 710 million in valuation. So we have to work backwards and make sure that our own calculations are also accurate and in line with also what the company may have announced, right? So this is the kind of in-depth or on-the-ground expertise that you might not be able to get from a web scraping kind of database.
There's a question on Indonesia data that Andi has already answered, but just to emphasize, yes, we will be adding Indonesia data. Andi, do you want to talk about timelines when people can expect to see it?
We are processing the database currently. We've been doing that in the past few months, and I'm hoping November at the latest.
Okay, that's great news. Yeah. There is a question on adding VC data. Are we planning to add fund performance data as well? Anyone of you can take that?
The data is definitely available, and we publish our analysis quarterly at least. The data is basically there. It's just a matter of when we decide to have it in the current format, that is.
Yes, and also the priority seems to be that there's a lot of interest in our Indonesia data as well. So, we are rolling it out phase by phase, but our editors and the team are slowly adding more information about the funds. But you can also look at them in our data Vantage, because if you go into the investor page, right, you could see who are the most active investors, and slowly if you click into them, you can actually see the kind of portfolio companies that they hold, and we would gradually be able to add the other matrix or things that you want to look at. But please feel free to write to us, research@DealStreetAsia.com. We'd be happy to take a look at what would be very useful to you in your work, and we'll be happy to take that internally for discussion and roll out.
Valerie, can you try type in East Ventures, for instance, on the search?
Sure.
So basically we have a lot of entities under East Ventures already. So what I was referring to earlier is basically the data on their funding performance, and a more an analytical look into the database. But the companies themselves are already in our database.
Yep.
Yeah, to sum up, we will be adding that data soon. However, we're prioritizing the Indonesia data first. Feedback is always welcome. research@dealstreetasia.com. Please share your questions, comments, feedback. What else would you like to see? How can we make this better? That's all the time we have today, but we're available in the booth. Please visit us. And I see other questions in the chat box that we were not able to take. Please meet with us and we can discuss this in detail. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.